The first thing Daniel noticed about the woman standing among his beehives was the royal spear lodged through her cloak. The second was that she had somehow crossed a field full of angry bees without being stung once. She was an orc, taller than any woman he had ever met, with rain shining on deep green skin and one broken gold ring hanging from her left tusk. Mud covered her boots. Blood darkened the cloth beneath her ribs. Yet she stood as if she were waiting to be announced in a throne room rather than bleeding between rows of lavender and wooden hives. Daniel stopped at the edge of the field with a basket of honeycomb against his hip. The orc woman raised one hand. Not a threat, a warning to stay quiet. Then came the distant sound of horses. Her amber eyes moved from the road to Daniel's cottage, then back to him. She seemed to make a decision that offended every part of her pride. "Pretend you're my husband," she said. Daniel looked at the spear in her cloak. He looked at the road, where black shapes were beginning to move through the rain. "I don't usually marry strangers before breakfast." "Then be grateful it is nearly noon." The riders rounded the hill. Daniel did not know her name. He did not know why soldiers carrying the royal wolf on their shields were chasing her through his village. He knew only that he had once worn that same wolf on his coat, and men wearing it had taught him what happened when decent people decided that someone else's danger was none of their concern. He set down the honeycomb basket and opened the garden gate. "If we're married," he said, "you should probably know my name. Daniel." The orc stepped through. Her knees almost failed, but she caught herself before he could touch her. "Zora." The name hit him harder than it should have. There were many orc women in the Northern Kingdom, but only one named Zora whose face appeared on silver coins. Princess Zora, eldest daughter of the dying orc king, the woman who had vanished from the palace 3 nights ago after supposedly attempting to murder her own father. Daniel stared at her. "Of course," he muttered. "I couldn't have accidentally married a shepherd. You may complain after you hide me." The riders were less than a minute away. Daniel pulled her toward the cottage. Zora moved with the stiff control of someone refusing to admit how much pain she was in. Inside, the room smelled of warm wax, dried apples, and the herbs hanging above the stove. Daniel kicked his boots aside and pointed to a chair. "Sit. I am not. If you fall, you'll knock over my best table. Sit." To his surprise, the princess obeyed. Daniel snapped the shaft of the spear where it had pierced the heavy outer layer of her cloak. The blade had passed through cloth, but only grazed her side. Her blood looked worse than the wound. He handed her a clean linen towel. "Hold that against it." Zora pressed the cloth to her ribs. Daniel went to the small cupboard beside the hearth and pulled out a faded dress that had belonged to his sister before she moved south. He held it up, looked at Zora's shoulders, and put it back. "That would fit one of your arms. Your wife's clothing would be more useful. My imaginary wife has an imaginary wardrobe." Zora's eyes narrowed. "You are unmarried. You chose me. You are the only man in the field. A foundation for a lasting union." The corner of her mouth almost moved. Then hoofbeats thundered past the window, and the small flicker of humor disappeared. Daniel pulled off his wool overshirt and gave it to her. It would not close across her chest, but it covered the royal embroidery inside her torn cloak. He took a jar of ash from beside the stove and rubbed a gray streak across the gold ring on her tusk. Zora caught his wrist. Her grip was powerful, even while wounded. Their faces were suddenly close. Daniel saw fine rain on her lashes and a thin scar crossing the bridge of her nose. He also saw fear, buried so deep that another man might have mistaken it for anger. "Do not touch that ring," she said. "Gold shines through windows. A village wife might own brass. She would not wear the royal seal on her tusk. Her gaze held his for another second. Then her fingers loosened. Do it. He darkened the gold and stepped away. Now we need a story. How long have we been married? Long enough that you have learned not to question me. No soldier would believe that. 3 years. Where did we meet? At the border market. I hate markets. Then your discomfort will make the memory convincing. Why did we marry? For the first time, Zora hesitated. You loved me. Daniel folded his arms. And you? Outside, horses stopped in his yard. Zora looked toward the door. I needed a place to stay. Finally, a detail with a ring of truth. Heavy boots struck the path. Daniel moved around the room quickly, taking down his single cup and replacing it with 2 mismatched clay mugs. He pulled a second pillow from the chest and threw it onto the bed in the adjoining room. Then he took a loaf from the shelf, tore it in half, and set both pieces on the table as if 2 people had abandoned their meal. Zora watched him with surprise. You have done this before. Pretended to be married? No. Lied to royal soldiers, more often than I'd like. If you want hotter and uncensored orc-bound fantasy romance stories, I'll be sharing them on my Patreon page. These are the deeper and more intense scenes I can't post here, so check the description for details. Now, back to Zora and Daniel. Because the royal soldiers were standing outside his cottage, and their fake marriage was about to require a very convincing performance. Someone struck the door with a mailed fist. Open in the king's name. Daniel's body remembered that voice before his mind did, not the man himself, but the tone, the certainty that a uniform could turn any command into justice. He looked at Zora. Can you stand? She rose. Pain tightened her jaw, but she did not make a sound. Put your arm around me, he said. Why? Because wives don't usually greet soldiers from the other side of the room. Zora stepped beside him and placed one heavy arm across his shoulders. She was half a head taller, and the movement pulled him against the warm, solid line of her body. Daniel became abruptly aware that his overshirt barely reached her thighs, and that the towel pressed to her wound was hidden only because his hand now rested at her waist. You are tense, she whispered. My new wife has brought 12 armed men to lunch. 9. That is much better. The fist hit the door again. Daniel opened the door. Rain and cold air swept into the cottage. The captain on the step wore black armor polished enough to reflect the gray sky. A scar pulled one side of his mouth downward, giving him a permanent expression of disgust. Behind him, 8 soldiers spread through Daniel's yard. 2 had already begun searching the shed. The captain looked at Daniel, then at Zora. His hand moved toward his sword. Name, he demanded. Daniel, I keep bees for the village. Her name. Daniel felt Zora's arm tighten across his shoulders. Zora, he said. The captain's expression sharpened. Daniel gave him a tired smile. I know. Her mother named her after the princess. It causes trouble whenever tax collectors come through. Where is she from? The northern valleys. Which valley? The one with her family in it. I try not to visit. A soldier behind the captain laughed before quickly lowering his eyes. The captain did not. We are looking for a dangerous fugitive. An orc woman traveling alone, tall, wounded, possibly carrying royal property. My wife is tall, Daniel said. She is also not alone, and if you call her dangerous while she's hungry, I won't argue. The captain stared at the bloodless towel pressed beneath Zora's arm. Why is she injured? Zora answered before Daniel could. My husband keeps bees. The captain glanced at the hives. Bees do not carry spears. No, she said, but I chased a thief who did. What thief? The one who tried to steal our honey before dawn. He ran into the woods. If your men find him, tell them to return my good knife. Daniel looked up at her. You told me you dropped that knife in the well. I did not want you going after him. It was my mother's knife. And you are my husband. I chose the more valuable object. The answer came so naturally that Daniel nearly believed it. More importantly, two soldiers exchanged the embarrassed looks of men who felt they had stepped into a private argument. The captain remained unconvinced. His gaze passed over the cottage. The 2 cups, the divided loaf, the extra pillow visible through the inner doorway. At last, it settled on Zora's left hand. No wedding ring. Zora lifted her chin. Orcs do not wear marriage rings on their fingers. The captain pointed at the dull band on her tusk. That one is not new. Neither is my husband. This time Daniel heard several soldiers choke back laughter. The captain stepped over the threshold without invitation. His wet boots left black marks on the floor. You won't object to a search? I object already, Daniel said, but I doubt it will stop you. 2 soldiers entered. One opened cupboards, while the other checked beneath the table. The captain walked slowly toward Zora. Daniel could feel her breathing become shallow. Beneath his palm, her body was coiled as tight as a drawn bow. If she fought, the room would become a slaughterhouse. Even wounded, she might kill 3 or 4. The rest would kill her. Daniel tightened his hand at her waist, hoping she understood that he was asking her to wait. The captain stopped close enough to see the ash on her tusk. Look at me, he ordered. Zora did. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Daniel acted before it could become certainty. You see, he said loudly. This is why we never finish breakfast. Every man who comes to the door stares at my wife. He turned Zora toward him. One hand rose to the side of her neck. He intended only to block the captain's view, perhaps to press his forehead to hers like an affectionate husband. Zora had a different idea. She caught the front of his shirt and kissed him. There was nothing hesitant about it. Her mouth was warm and demanding, her lower tusks brushing the edges of his lips. Daniel forgot the soldiers. He forgot the rain. He forgot that the hand at her waist was part of a performance, and pulled her closer. For one reckless heartbeat, Zora kissed him back with equal force. Then she released him. Daniel stared up at her, unable to remember what lie came next. Zora looked past him at the captain. You were saying? The captain's face had hardened, but the absolute certainty was gone. A princess raised at court would never display herself before common soldiers. At least, that was what a man like him would believe. One of the soldiers emerged from the bedchamber holding Daniel's old courier coat. The royal wolf was still stitched inside its collar. Captain. Silence filled the cottage. The captain took the coat. You served the palace. Years ago. As what? A courier. Then you know the penalty for sheltering a traitor. Daniel did know. He had once delivered an order bearing that penalty to a farmhouse where a grandmother and 2 children were hiding a wounded deserter. He had left the message unopened on the road, warned the family, and never returned to the palace. I know the penalty for many things, he said. The captain studied him, then Zora. When did you marry? 3 years ago, they answered together. Who witnessed it? Neither spoke. The captain smiled for the first time. It did not improve his face. Border marriages are recorded by the village elder. We will visit the registry. If your names are there, I will apologize for disturbing your meal. If not, I will return before sunset, and hang you both from the walnut tree." He threw the coat onto the floor and turned away. At the door, he looked back. "Do not leave the cottage." The soldiers followed him into the rain. Hoofbeats faded toward the village. Daniel waited until he could no longer hear them. Then he stepped away from Zora. 3 years? You agreed. I agreed to a story. I did not know this village kept records of my imaginary marriage. Can the elder be bribed? No. Threatened? Also no. And before you ask, we cannot kill him. I was not going to ask. You looked as if you were considering it. I was considering whether you always talk this much after being kissed. Daniel's mouth went dry. That was part of the performance. Of course. Zora's voice was calm, but she would not meet his eyes. She removed her arm from his shoulders and crossed to the window. Daniel touched his lips before realizing what he was doing. We have until sunset, he said. Less if the captain rides quickly. Then we leave now. The road is watched. Your wound is open. And if we run, every soldier in the valley will know you're the princess. I am not surrendering. I didn't say you should. Daniel picked up his old coat, ran a thumb across the worn stitching, and looked toward the village. An absurd idea was forming. It was dangerous, humiliating, and possibly illegal. In his experience, those qualities often arrive together. The captain asked whether our marriage was recorded, he said. He didn't ask when it was recorded. Zora turned. Explain. The elder writes new marriages in the same book as old ones. The page is marked by season, not by day. If we convince him to marry us before the captain gets there, our names will be in the registry. You propose a real marriage to preserve a false one. A border marriage can be dissolved after 1 moon if both people agree. And if they do not, then it becomes considerably more inconvenient. Zora studied him as though evaluating an unfamiliar weapon. You would bind yourself to a stranger accused of treason? Only until the moon changes. Why? Daniel glanced at the royal spear lying on his floor. Because the men chasing you aren't behaving like men protecting a king. They're behaving like men hiding what they did to one. And because I saw your face when the captain entered. You were afraid of being taken. But you were more afraid you might have to kill those soldiers to prevent it. A murderer wouldn't care. Zora's expression shifted, a crack in the wall around her. You know nothing about me. Then tell me while we walk. He fetched a dark traveling cloak, a jar of honey, and the small wooden box in which his mother had kept her wedding cords. Zora watched him open it. 2 braided cords lay inside, one blue and one faded red. Those belong to your parents, she said. Yes. Do not use them for a lie. It's either these or the rope from the well. She touched the red cord with one careful finger. For all her strength, the gesture was unexpectedly gentle. The red one, she said. If we must. Daniel took the blue. They left through the back garden while the rain hid them from the road. Daniel led her between the hives, across a narrow footbridge, and into an orchard behind the village. Zora kept pace for the first 100 steps. Then her stride faltered. Lean on me. I am twice your weight. Only in armor and stubbornness. That was almost charming. I saved my best lines for my second wedding. She gave him a look, but placed her hand on his shoulder. They walked beneath dripping apple trees. Daniel could feel heat through her palm. The wound was not deep, but exhaustion had hollowed the skin beneath her eyes. What happened at the palace? He asked. Zora was silent so long he thought she would refuse. My father has been ill for months, she finally said. The court physicians called it a wasting fever. I found black root sediment in his medicine. It causes weakness, confusion, and eventually death. The regent controls the physicians. When I confronted him, he placed a bloody knife in my chamber and claimed I had tried to murder the king. Why not kill you at the palace? Because the clan chiefs would demand vengeance. A public trial allows the regent to call it justice. He needs me alive until I confess. Will you? Zora's fingers tightened on his shoulder. Not while I have a tongue. Daniel did not ask what they might do to change that answer. What royal property are you carrying? She looked at him sharply. The captain mentioned it. Zora reached beneath the torn edge of her cloak and pulled out a narrow leather packet bound in oilskin. Letters in the regent's hand. Payments to the poisoner. Orders to move loyal guards away from my father's rooms. Enough evidence to turn the clans against him if I can reach the old signal tower beyond the eastern ridge. That's 2 days on foot. 1 on horseback. Every horse will be watched. Then I will walk. Daniel looked at the blood seeping again through the linen at her ribs. First, he said, you will get married. The elder lived beside the village mill in a house leaning so far over the stream that it seemed to be listening to the water. Daniel knocked 3 times. No answer. He knocked again. At last, the door opened a finger's width. A pale eye appeared in the gap. If you are selling honey, the elder said, I still have the jar you sold me last week. I'm not selling honey. Then I owe you nothing. Good day. Daniel put his boot in the doorway. I need to get married. The door opened wider. The elder looked at Daniel, then at Zora towering behind him beneath the dark cloak. He looked back at Daniel. You have had a busy morning. Can we come in? That depends. Are the royal soldiers searching my pantry because of her? Only if they finish with mine. The elder sighed and let them enter. His front room was crowded with books, fishing nets, and jars containing objects Daniel had never wanted identified. A giant registry lay open on a stand near the fire. Zora lowered her hood. The elder's face went still. He bowed slowly and without taking his eyes from her. Your Highness, do not call me that. An old man is allowed one foolish act each morning. I used mine opening the door. Daniel put the cords on the table. The captain is coming to check the marriage registry. He believes Zora is my wife. Is she? Not yet. The elder looked from the cords to Daniel. And you expect me to solve that grammatical difficulty? Immediately. A marriage performed to deceive a royal officer is fraud. A royal officer serving a traitor has no lawful authority, Zora said. The elder considered this. That is the sort of argument that sounds excellent until the hanging begins. Zora placed the packet of letters on the table. Read the first page. He did. His humor vanished. Is the king dead? He asked. Not when I fled. He may have days, perhaps hours. The elder closed the packet. Then we had better not waste either. He pulled the registry closer, dipped a pen, and asked them to stand before the hearth. Border custom is simple. No crowns, no priests, no speeches that outlast the marriage. Each of you will bind a cord around the other's wrist. You will promise shelter, truth, and a place beside your fire. The promise lasts 1 moon and 1 day. After that, either of you may end it before a witness. If neither does, the bond remains. Do you understand? Daniel nodded. Zora stared at the red cord in her hand. Orc marriages are made with iron. Human wrists dislike iron, Daniel said. Human promises seem easily broken. The elder lifted one eyebrow. The strength of a promise is not measured by the object tied around it. Zora met his gaze, then turned to Daniel. He held out his left hand. Her fingers were rough from sword practice, but she wound the cord around his wrist with delicate attention. When she knotted it, she spoke quietly. I promise you, shelter beneath any roof that is mine. Truth when truth is mine to give. And a place beside my fire for as long as this bond endures. The words sounded nothing like a trick. Daniel swallowed. He took the blue cord and tied it around her wrist. Against her green skin, the faded thread looked fragile. I promise you, shelter beneath any roof that is mine. Truth when truth is mine to give. And a place beside my fire for as long as this bond endures. The elder pressed their bound wrists together, wrote their names in the registry, and shut the book. It is done. Outside, horses approached the mill. Daniel glanced through the window. The captain dismounted beside the stream. He rode quickly, the elder observed. Can you hide the letters? Zora asked. The elder tucked the packet into one of the jars on his shelf. No soldier has willingly opened my pickled eel bladder in 20 years. The captain entered without knocking. 2 soldiers followed. His gaze went first to the registry, then to the cords. What is this? The elder placed himself in front of the book. A private ceremony interrupted by a public nuisance. They claim to be married 3 years. They have lived as husband and wife for 3 years, the elder said smoothly. Today they finally completed the paperwork. Young people delay everything. The captain opened the registry. Fresh ink shone beside their names. Convenient. Marriage rarely is. The captain examined Zora's cord. His eyes moved to Daniel's face. You expect me to believe a former royal courier settled here, married an orc woman named Zora, and never registered the union until the exact day the princess disappeared? No, Daniel said. I expect you to read the book and honor the law. Belief is your own trouble. The captain shut the registry hard enough to shake dust from the rafters. The roads are closed. No one leaves the village until the fugitive is caught. Anyone traveling after dark will be arrested. He moved close to Daniel. Enjoy your marriage. It may be short. When the soldiers were gone, the elder retrieved the letters. You cannot take the road, he said. They are placing men at both bridges. There is an old shepherd's path through the western forest, Daniel replied. It joins the ridge trail above the watch posts. Zora shook her head. That adds half a day. It also prevents an arrow from being added to your collection. The elder went to a cupboard and brought out a small iron key. There is a honey wagon in the mill shed. It belongs to a trader who died last winter. The canvas is patched, but the wheels are sound. Take it toward the western farms before the road closes. No one will question a beekeeper delivering winter stores with his new wife. Daniel looked at Zora. Can you drive? I can command a cavalry charge. That wasn't my question. Then you drive. The elder added bread, cheese, and a clay bottle of medicine to a sack. Before handing Zora the packet, he placed one knotted hand over hers. Bring the truth to those who can use it. But remember, truth alone does not defeat cruel men. People do. Give them a reason to stand. Zora inclined her head, not as a princess receiving advice from a subject, but as a young woman accepting help from someone who had risked his life for her. They left through the mill shed. The wagon smelled of old straw and spilled honey. A patient gray mare waited between the shafts. Daniel climbed onto the bench. Zora settled beside him, one hand hidden beneath her cloak and the other resting near the knife at her belt. Smile, Daniel said. Why? Newlyweds are supposed to look happy. You first. Daniel showed his teeth. You look ill, she said. That is marriage. For the second time that day, Zora almost laughed. They rolled through the village square under the eyes of the royal patrol. Daniel waved to the baker and complained loudly about the price of oats. Zora held his arm with convincing possession. The blue cord around her wrist disappeared beneath her sleeve, but he could feel the red cord on his own skin every time he moved the reins. At the western gate, 2 soldiers stopped the wagon. Road is closed. We're going to the outlying farms, Daniel said. Winter honey delivery. The soldier looked beneath the canvas. Jars, empty baskets, blankets, and a wooden hive filled the bed. Daniel had placed the letters inside the hive. No sensible man would reach into one without smoke. Turn back before sunset. Zora leaned across Daniel, letting her cloak fall open just enough to reveal his oversized shirt and the marriage cord. We hope to spend the night at the Western Inn, she said. We were married today. The younger soldier flushed. The older one grinned and slapped the side of the wagon. Let them through. No one should spend a wedding night within hearing of this village's mill wheel. The barrier lifted. Daniel guided the mare onto the western road. They traveled in silence until the village disappeared behind a bend. Then Zora exhaled. You are good at lying, she said. I sell honey. Half my work is convincing people that one jar tastes different from another. Does it? Of course. Then that was a poor example. Daniel glanced at her. You are also good at lying. Her expression closed. A princess learns early. The road narrowed through fields silvered by rain. For a while, only the wagon wheels and the mare's hooves broke the quiet. Daniel wanted to ask what had been real in the cottage. The fear, the trust, the kiss. He said none of it. Instead, he pointed to the cord on her wrist. 1 moon and 1 day. Then we stand before a witness and end it. Zora looked down at the blue thread. That is our agreement. Good. Good, she repeated. Neither sounded pleased. By late afternoon, Daniel left the main road and hid the wagon beneath pines. Zora's fever was rising, so he cleaned the spear cut and sealed it with honey beneath fresh linen. She teased him for blushing when she removed his shirt to expose the wound, but her own breath caught when his fingers brushed her waist. A branch cracked nearby. Though wounded, Zora instantly stepped between Daniel and the sound with her knife drawn. Only deer emerged, yet Daniel could not forget that she had protected him without hesitation. They shared bread beside a hidden fire. Zora distrusted the elder's medicine, so Daniel drank first. She accepted the bottle after that, watching him with an expression that was beginning to resemble trust. Within an hour, her eyelids grew heavy. Daniel arranged blankets in the wagon bed and helped her climb inside. The space was narrow. When she lay down, there was barely room beside her. You take the wagon, he said. I'll sleep near the fire. The ground is soaked. I've slept on worse. So have I. Get in. Zora, if we are discovered, a husband sleeping 10 feet from his wife will look suspicious. In the middle of an empty forest, your soldiers appear unusually interested in marital details. Daniel climbed beneath the canvas. They lay side by side, his shoulder pressed against hers. The wagon smelled of pine, wax, and the faint, wild scent of rain on her skin. Daniel stared at the roof, inches above his face. This is very convincing, he said. Be quiet. Yes, wife. Zora turned toward him. Even in the dim firelight, he could see the warning in her eyes. Do not call me that as a joke. What should I call you? Your Highness? Fugitive? Woman who stole my bed? Zora is sufficient. Daniel shifted onto his side. Then call me Daniel. You keep saying husband as if it is an accusation. She considered him. Daniel. His name sounded different in her voice. Lower, warmer. Zora. For a moment, neither looked away. Then she reached up and touched the red cord on his wrist. Why did you keep your parents' marriage cords? They died when I was young. Fever took my mother. My father followed 2 winters later. The cords were one of the few things my sister did not take south. Were they happy? Usually. They argued about money, weather, and whether my father snored. But every evening he brought my mother tea without being asked. Every morning she left the warmest piece of bread for him. I suppose happiness is mostly small things done often. Zora's thumb moved over the faded thread. Royal marriages are not made for happiness. What are they made for? Borders, armies, grain rights, heirs. Very romantic. A princess is born owing her people a future. Affection is a luxury purchased after duty, if anything remains. Was someone chosen for you? Her face turned toward the canvas roof. 3 possibilities. A clan heir with 6 hunting lodges. A southern lord who collects rare birds. A widowed commander who speaks to women as if issuing orders to furniture. I see why you chose a beekeeper. You were the only man in the field, she reminded him. And yet I compare favorably. A quiet sound escaped her. Not almost laughter this time, but the real thing. It was low and brief and startlingly beautiful. Daniel smiled in the dark. What about you? She asked. Why did you never marry? Perhaps no woman wanted to live among several thousand insects. That is not the truth. The promise at the elder's hearth seemed to tighten around his wrist. No, Daniel said. It isn't. He had promised truth when truth was his to give. He had not expected it to matter. At the palace, he continued, I carried messages for officers and ministers. I believed that if an order had a royal seal, it had been considered by wiser people than me. Then I was told to deliver an arrest warrant to a family sheltering a deserter. I opened it on the road. It ordered the execution of everyone in the house, including children. Zora went still. I warned them and burned the order. The family escaped. The deserter did not. He stayed behind to delay the soldiers. Afterward, the palace called me a coward and a traitor. I returned home and kept bees because they are honest creatures. They sting when threatened. They do not call it law. Who signed the order? The regent. Zora closed her eyes. I am sorry. You didn't sign it. It bore my family's seal. A symbol does not choose the hand that uses it. A ruler is responsible for what is done beneath that symbol. Daniel heard the weight in her answer. She did not speak of the crown as treasure she feared losing. She spoke of it as a debt. Then survive, he said. Take it back. Do better. Zora turned toward him again. The distance between their faces was small enough that he could feel her breath. You make it sound simple. Simple and easy are not the same thing. Her eyes dropped to his mouth. Daniel's pulse stumbled. She leaned closer, or perhaps the wagon shifted beneath them. He could not tell. Then a howl sounded far off in the forest. Zora pulled away and reached for her knife. Wolf, Daniel whispered. A real one this time. I dislike your forest. It was peaceful before I married royalty. The medicine drew her into sleep soon after. Daniel remained awake, listening to the rain and her slow breathing. At some point, Zora's hand found the front of his coat. Her fingers closed there as if, even in sleep, she needed proof that she had not been left alone. Daniel covered her hand with his. He told himself it was part of the performance. Before dawn, he woke to voices. Zora was already alert. Her palm covered his mouth. The warmth of her body pressed him into the blankets while footsteps moved outside the wagon. "Tracks end here," a man said. "Check beneath the canvas." Daniel saw Zora's knife in her free hand. He slowly shook his head. Fighting would reveal them. She pointed toward the rear flap, and then to the trees. They could cut through the canvas, but the wagon would move and give them away. The flap lifted. Daniel did the only thing he could think of. He rolled over Zora, pulled the blanket across them, and kissed the side of her neck. She stiffened in shock. Morning light entered the wagon. A young shepherd stared at them with wide eyes. 2 other villagers stood behind him. Daniel raised his head with practiced irritation. "Do you mind?" The shepherd dropped the flap. "Sorry, we thought this wagon was abandoned." "It was not," Zora called, her voice rough. The footsteps retreated quickly. Outside, someone began laughing. Daniel remained frozen above her. One of Zora's hands rested at the back of his neck. The other still held the knife. "A convincing performance," she murmured. It worked. The shepherd was not a soldier. He might have been dangerous. He was carrying a turnip. Some turnips are very hard. Zora's mouth curved. Her hand at his neck pulled him down until his lips hovered above hers. "You missed," she said. This kiss was not for a captain. It began softly, almost carefully. Daniel felt the slight curve of her tusks and the warm exhale of surprise when he did not pull away. Then Zora's fingers threaded into his hair, and careful became something deeper. The wagon, the rain, the hunted road beyond the trees all disappeared. There was only the taste of her, the strength in the arm around his back, and the frightening certainty that nothing about this felt false. Daniel drew away first. Zora watched him, breathing hard. "We should leave," he said. "Yes." Neither moved. "The signal tower," he added. "Of course." Her hand slowly slipped from his hair. They broke camp in awkward silence. The wound looked cleaner, and the fever had eased, though Zora still favored one side. Daniel hitched the mare while she scattered the fire and covered their tracks. The shepherds had left a turnip on the wagon bench. Zora picked it up. A formidable weapon. Daniel took it from her. "We may need it." They found the old path shortly after sunrise. It climbed through thick forest, where the wagon barely fit between the trees. Twice, Daniel had to cut fallen branches. Zora walked beside the mare to lighten the load. At midday, they reached a harvest festival beside the only bridge. Royal soldiers checked the wagons, while 2 black-armored riders approached behind them. To look harmless, Daniel placed a wreath of leaves over Zora's hood and announced that his new wife wanted to pay the traditional bride's toll. The toll was a dance. "I would rather fight the riders," Zora whispered. "So would I. Put your hand on my shoulder." At first, they moved like 2 people losing the same battle. Then Zora found the rhythm. Daniel turned beneath her arm. Her leafy crown slipped over one tusk, and she laughed openly. The sight transformed her so completely that Daniel missed a step. "You are staring," she said. "My wife is distracting." When the music ended, a soldier compared Zora with a severe royal portrait. A village woman laughed and declared that the clumsy bride could never have been palace-trained. The soldier let them pass. Beyond the bridge, Zora threw the wreath at Daniel. A moment later, she carefully removed one leaf from his hair. "You stared," she said. "You smiled." "I was pretending." "So was I." The lie hung between them, gentle and obvious. They traveled until dusk. The path rose higher, and the air became sharp with the smell of stone and snow. At a crossroads, Daniel found fresh hoof prints pressed deep into the mud. "At least 6 riders," he said. "They passed less than an hour ago." "The captain." "He knows about the western path." Zora opened the hive and retrieved the packet. "Then we abandoned the wagon." Daniel looked at the mare. "They will follow her tracks. Send her south." He removed the harness, packed food and blankets into 2 sacks, and slapped the mare gently toward a meadow trail. She wandered away with the empty wagon, leaving a clear set of tracks. Daniel and Zora climbed east on foot over rocky ground where their prints would be difficult to follow. Night fell quickly. By the time they reached a narrow cave beneath the ridge, Daniel's legs shook from the climb. Zora was breathing hard, one hand pressed to her bandage. Inside the cave, ancient charcoal drawings covered the walls. Deer, hands, suns, and horned figures dancing around fires. Daniel lit a candle. "Shepherds use this place in storms," he said. "We can rest until the moon rises." Zora sat against the stone. Daniel checked her bandage. "No fresh blood. You need food. You need food. I ate at the festival. You ate half an apple. You were watching? A wife notices." The words came too easily. Both heard it. Daniel broke the remaining bread and gave her the larger piece. Zora exchanged it when he looked away. He saw but said nothing. After they ate, she removed the oilskin packet and checked the letters one by one. Daniel sat across from her. "What happens when the signal is lit?" "Old law requires every clan chief within sight to answer. I will present the letters. If enough believe me, they will march to the palace. And if they don't, the regent will hang us beside each other. Us? You married a traitor. A useful reminder." Zora folded the letters. "You can turn back before dawn. The soldiers want me, not you. Return to your village. Say I threatened you." The captain saw my face. "Then go south. Your sister is there." "You remembered?" "I remember what matters." Daniel looked at the red cord around his wrist. "I promised shelter. You have given it. I promised a place beside my fire. This is a candle in a cave. It hardly counts. Then I must stay until I find a proper fire." Zora's eyes shone in the dim light. "Why are you doing this?" The honest answer frightened him more than the soldiers. "At first, because I knew the regent was cruel. Then because you protected me in the forest. Because you traded bread when you thought I would not notice. Because you looked happier wearing leaves than gold." He moved closer. "And now?" she asked. "Now I don't know where the lie ends." Zora placed the letters aside. "Neither do I." Daniel lifted his hand to her face. He stopped before touching her, giving her time to move away. She leaned into his palm. Their kiss in the cave held no urgency and no audience. It was slow, truthful, and more dangerous than either of the others. Zora's hands came around his waist. Daniel traced the scar across her nose with his thumb and felt her shiver. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "One moon and one day," she whispered. "That was the agreement. I am beginning to dislike our agreement." "Good," Daniel said. "So am I." They slept for less than an hour, sitting against the cave wall with Zora's head on Daniel's shoulder. The moon was high when the sound of metal striking stone woke them. Daniel snuffed the candle. Voices carried from the path below. "Search the cave. The captain wants them alive." Zora rose without a sound and handed Daniel the packet. There is a crack at the back. It may open onto the upper slope. May? Give me the turnip and find out. Despite everything, he nearly laughed. He crawled between two rocks while Zora waited near the entrance with her knife. The passage was narrow and black. After several yards, cold wind touched his face. "It opens," he whispered. The first soldier entered the cave. Zora caught him before he could shout, turned his sword aside, and struck the side of his helmet with the handle of her knife. He collapsed. A second man rushed in. She kicked the candlestand into his legs and followed Daniel into the crack. They emerged on a ledge above a steep ravine. The signal tower was visible at last, a broken black shape against the moon, perhaps 2 miles away. Shouts rose behind them. Zora pointed to a line of white stones crossing the slope. That way. They ran. Daniel's lungs burned. Loose rock slid beneath his boots. Zora could have moved faster alone, but she kept one hand at his back whenever the path narrowed. Arrows struck the stones around them. One tore through Daniel's coat. At the base of the tower, they found the wooden door chained from the outside. "The regent prepared well," Zora said. Daniel examined the rusted chain. Not well enough. He took the jar of honey from his sack, poured it over the old iron hinge, and forced the pin upward with the point of Zora's knife. The hinge groaned loose. Together, they pulled the door away from the stone. "Honey again," Zora said. "You married a specialist." They climbed the spiral stairs. At the top waited a great copper bowl filled with dry pitch. Beside it lay a striker and a pile of rotted wood. Daniel tore pages from an old logbook and built a small nest beneath the pitch. Zora struck sparks. Once, twice. Flame caught, crawled across the paper, then rose into the bowl. Orange fire exploded against the night. Across the mountains, darkness answered. For several terrible moments, nothing happened. Then a point of flame appeared on a far ridge. Another answered to the north, then 2 in the east. Signal fires spread from peak to peak until the mountains wore a chain of stars. Zora gripped the edge of the tower. Her face was lit gold. "They heard," Daniel said. "They heard." The tower door slammed below. The captain's voice echoed up the stairs. "And now they will watch their princess confess." Zora drew the captured sword. Daniel hid the packet inside his coat. The captain emerged onto the roof with 6 soldiers. He held a loaded crossbow aimed at Daniel's chest. "Drop the sword," he told Zora. She did not. The beekeeper first, then. Zora's blade fell to the stones. The captain smiled. "A princess surrendering for a common man. Your father would be ashamed." "My father knew that a crown exists to protect common people. The regent never understood that. Neither do you." 2 soldiers seized her arms. Another searched Daniel and removed the packet. The captain glanced at the letters before dropping them into the signal fire. Daniel lunged, but a soldier struck him to his knees. The oilskin curled. The letters blackened and vanished into flame. "There goes your truth," the captain said. "By sunrise, the clan chiefs will arrive. You will tell them you poisoned the king and fled with your human lover. Then you will order them home." "And if I refuse?" The crossbow turned toward Daniel again. Zora looked at him. Grief filled her face, but not defeat. "You should have gone south," she whispered. Daniel tasted blood where the blow had split his lip. "And missed the end of our wedding journey?" The captain struck him with the crossbow stock. Zora roared. The sound shook dust from the tower walls. She threw both guards from her arms, caught one by his breastplate, and drove him into the other. Daniel rolled as the crossbow fired. The bolt passed above him and shattered against stone. Chaos filled the tower roof. Zora fought without a weapon, using chains, elbows, and the narrow space. Daniel seized the fallen crossbow and swung it into a soldier's knees. The captain drew his sword. He cut Zora across the upper arm, then raised the blade for her neck. Daniel hurled the clay medicine bottle. It shattered against the captain's face. The man staggered, blinded by bitter liquid. Zora drove her shoulder into his chest and sent him crashing against the copper bowl. The remaining soldiers froze. Below the tower came the thunder of approaching horses. Dozens, then hundreds. The captain wiped his eyes and began to laugh. You have no letters, no proof, only the word of an accused daughter and the man she seduced into treason. Daniel reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a folded sheet. Not only her word. Zora stared at him. Before placing the packet in the hive, Daniel had copied the shortest letter onto the blank back of an old honey invoice. A courier survived by expecting messages to be stolen. The copy carried the regent's instructions, payment mark, and private seal. You never told me, Zora said. Truth when truth is mine to give. I was waiting for the right moment. The first clan riders reached the tower yard. Their leaders climbed to the roof, weapons drawn. Zora handed them the copied order and told them where the poison could be found, in the palace medicine room. She did not beg them to believe her. She spoke clearly, named what she had seen, and offered to stand judgment after her father was safe. The captain tried to interrupt. One of his own soldiers stepped forward. The princess speaks truth, the soldier said. We were ordered to kill the palace guards who helped her escape. We were told the king was already dead. Another soldier lowered his weapon, then another. The clan chiefs placed the captain in chains. Before dawn, they rode for the palace. Daniel expected Zora to lead from the front. Instead, she found him beside the tower stair, pressing cloth to his bleeding lip. You copied the letter. My handwriting is terrible, but royal crimes make memorable reading. She touched his cheek. Her fingers trembled now that the danger had passed. He could have killed you. He nearly did. That is not amusing. No. Her anger broke. She pulled him against her and held him so tightly he could barely breathe. I cannot lose you, she said into his hair. Daniel wrapped his arms around her. That sounds inconvenient. Our marriage ends in a month. Zora drew back. Firelight reflected in her wet eyes. Do not joke about that. Then tell me what is true. She looked toward the riders preparing below. When she spoke, her voice belonged neither to a princess nor a fugitive. It was simply hers. I asked you to pretend because I needed shelter. I kissed you because I needed the captain to doubt. But I stayed close after he left because I wanted to. I watched you sleep because your face was peaceful. I remembered your sister because every word you spoke mattered to me. I do not know how to be a wife without making it a treaty. And I do not know how to love a man without fearing what duty will take from him. But I know that leaving you feels worse than any wound I have carried. Daniel took her bound wrist and placed it over his heart. Then here is my truth. I opened the gate because I could not watch another innocent person be hunted. I married you because it was the only plan I had. But I followed you because the thought of returning to a quiet house without you felt like another kind of cowardice. I love your terrible dancing. I love that you protect people before yourself. I love the woman who wore leaves on her head and forgot she was supposed to look royal. Zora's lower lip trembled into a smile. My dancing was adequate. It was a disaster. You are fortunate I love you. It was the first time either of them had said it. Daniel kissed her beneath the signal fire while armies gathered below. No one watching could have mistaken it for a performance. The ride to the palace took the rest of the day. Daniel traveled beside Zora, wearing a borrowed cloak and holding onto a horse that seemed offended by him. When they reached the capital, loyal guards had already opened the gates. The regent was arrested in the king's medicine room with Blackroot still locked in his cabinet. The king lived. Recovery came slowly. For weeks, Zora remained at the palace, hearing testimony, replacing corrupt officers, and sending food to villages the regent had taxed into hunger. Daniel stayed until the physicians declared the king safe. He disliked the marble halls, the whispering courtiers, and the servants who tried to take his muddy boots. Zora found him one morning beside the palace garden, teaching a frightened young gardener how to move a swarm of bees into a wooden box. "You have brought your insects into my home," she said. "Our home," he reminded her. She touched the blue cord still tied around her wrist. For 12 more days. Duty filled every hour between them. At council, Zora was measured and commanding. In private, she stole fruit from Daniel's breakfast and fell asleep with her head in his lap. They spoke of the future only in pieces. A royal marriage could change alliances. A human husband with no title would anger half the court. A princess could not spend every day in a honey field. A beekeeper could not pretend marble walls were enough. On the final morning of their promised month, Daniel woke before sunrise. Zora's side of the bed was empty. On the pillow lay the blue cord. He held it for a long time. By border law, either person could end the bond after 1 moon before a witness. She had been summoned to a public council at dawn. The message seemed clear. Daniel packed his old coat, the red cord still around his wrist, and left the palace before the city bells rang. He did not ask her to choose between him and her people. Love that demanded she become smaller was not love he wanted. He returned to the village alone. The cottage was exactly as he had left it. 2 clay mugs on the table, a broken spear shaft near the hearth, and 1 extra pillow on the bed. Daniel put away his coat. He returned the second mug to the cupboard, then took it out again. Winter arrived. News came from the capital. The king had abdicated to recover in the countryside. The princess had taken the crown before the assembled clans. The regent and captain would face judgment. Taxes on the border villages had been reduced. Daniel worked. Bees needed feeding no matter who wore a crown. Yet each evening, he brought 2 cups of tea to the table before remembering that only 1 was needed. On the first clear morning after the snow, someone knocked at his door. Daniel opened it. Zora stood on the step. She wore no crown. Snow dusted her dark hair. A simple traveling cloak covered her shoulders, and the healed scar at her ribs was hidden beneath a deep red dress. Behind her waited no army, only a single rider holding 2 tired horses. Around Zora's wrist was the blue cord. "You left it on the pillow," Daniel said. "I left it because the palace metalworker needed its exact colors." She opened her hand. 2 narrow rings rested on her palm, forged from dark orc iron. One carried a line of faded blue enamel. The other held a line of red. "You disappeared before the council," she continued. "I had planned a proposal. There were musicians, clan witnesses, and a speech that took 3 scribes all night. I am sorry I missed it." "You should be. The musicians were expensive." Daniel looked at the rings. Hope hurt more than he expected. "What about the court?" They objected. "The clans?" Several shouted. "The alliances. We'll survive." "And your duty?" Zora stepped closer. "My duty is to build a kingdom where people are not sacrificed to preserve appearances." That includes me. It also includes a stubborn beekeeper who believes he must leave before anyone can ask him to stay. Daniel lowered his eyes. I thought I was freeing you. You were deciding for me. Do it again, and I will appoint you royal keeper of sewage accounts. A terrible threat. I have worse. She held out the red-banded ring. Daniel, there are no soldiers at your door. No one is chasing me. I do not need shelter. I have a palace, 3 fortresses, and more rooms than any sensible person could use. So hear me clearly. I choose your cottage. I choose your bees. I choose your irritating questions and the way you give away the larger piece of bread. I choose you when there is no reason left to pretend. Will you be my husband? Daniel looked past her at the hives shining under snow. Then at the woman who had first entered his field bleeding, proud, and alone. Only if you admit I led the dance well. Zora considered. I can find another husband. He laughed and pulled her into his arms. Yes, he said against her mouth. I will. Their second wedding took place in the field among the sleeping hives. The elder witnessed it. Daniel's sister traveled north. The king attended wrapped in blankets and complained cheerfully about the cold. Zora bound the iron ring around Daniel's finger, and he placed its twin on hers. No one asked them to promise a month. In the years that followed, Zora divided her time between the palace and the border cottage. The kingdom's council learned that meetings ended early during the honey harvest. Daniel learned to ride, though his horse never respected him. Their first dance as a truly married couple was still terrible, but neither cared. Above the cottage hearth, they kept the 2 faded cords in a small wooden box. Beside them lay the broken gold ring from Zora's tusk, no longer needed as proof that she belonged to a royal house. Whenever visitors asked how a queen and a beekeeper had fallen in love, Daniel said she had proposed in a field. Zora said he had opened the gate. Both were true, and on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the bees had settled, Daniel still brought her tea without being asked. Zora still left him the warmest piece of bread. Their happiness was not built from crowns, signal fires, or the lies that had saved them. It was built from small things, done often, beside a fire they both called home. If you enjoyed Zora and Daniel's story, subscribe for more orc-bound fantasy romance. And if you want the hotter, uncensored stories that cannot be shared here, you can find my Patreon through the link in the description.